Last time we talked about refraction in a bit of detail. Now we're going to take that idea and apply it to thin lenses. Now a lens you've probably seen before. It's something like a magnifying glass, or if you wear glasses, those are examples of lenses. Now the focal length of a lens depends on its shape and the index of refraction. So when we talk about its shape, it means how thick or thin that lens is, and then the index of refraction will refer to the actual material that the lens is made of. Both of those things will determine the focal length of the lens itself. Just as in mirrors, there are two types of lenses, convex and concave. A convex lens is said to be converging, and that means that it is thick in the middle and thinner at the edges, and light will bend toward the principal axis. So if we imagine that principal axis being this center line right here, as light rays pass through the lens and refract or bend, they're going to bend toward that center axis. A concave lens is thin at the middle and thicker at the edges, and it is called a diverging lens because light diverges or bends away from the principal axis. So imagine again our axis right in the middle. As light travels through, it's going to refract or bend outward and away from that axis. Next, we're going to look at ray diagrams and the images that are formed for lenses. It's very similar to mirrors, except now instead of the light reflecting, it will refract and pass through the lens to the other side. Another thing that makes lenses different in ray diagrams is that there are 3 light rays drawn instead of 2. So I'm also going to color code just like we did for mirrors. So if you would like to grab some colors and also a ruler to make sure your lines are straight, you can pause the video and go ahead and do that. So the 3 rays that we're going to draw, the first light ray is similar to the primary ray we had for mirrors. For lenses, this light ray is incident parallel to the principal axis, and it's going to refract through the second focal point. So since light can travel on both sides of a lens, then it's going to have a focal point on each side. So we'll talk about that when we draw our pictures. I'm going to take this ray and color it red. So I'm just going to put a red key out to the side. Our second light ray is similar to the principal focus ray we used for mirrors. This time for lenses, the incident light ray, if it's a converging lens, will pass through the first focal point. And if it's a diverging lens, will pass through the second focal point initially. And then the second part of the ray, when it refracts, it will refract parallel to the principal axis. And I am going to color code this ray as blue. Our third ray is a new one. I don't have a particular name for it, but it is an incident light ray that goes through the geometrical center of a lens, and it does not refract. And we are going to color this one green. So let's do a couple of examples. You already have some of these drawn, so I'm just going to trace over the colors. Ray number 1 would be the one that goes parallel and then refracts through the focal point. For my diverging lens, that ray would start out parallel and refracts where it lines up with the focal point. So there's a dotted line right here. Now remember, these are just examples. You shouldn't be drawing anything yet. My second ray was the one that went through the focal point first, and then when it refracts, it's going to be parallel to the axis. And then for our concave lens, it gets aimed at that second focal point and it refracts parallel to the axis. And now let's do our third ray. For the convex lens, we start at the top of the object and we just go straight through the middle, and this ray doesn't bend at all. Same thing for the concave lens. It starts at the top of the object and just goes straight through the middle. Okay. Now we're going to do some together, and we'll take it one step at a time. So get your ruler and your colors ready. The possible images that can be formed from lenses are going to be real and virtual, just like we had for mirrors. This time, a real image will be formed on the side of the lens that's opposite to the object, and only a convex lens can form a real image. And then a virtual image will appear to be on the same side of the lens as the object, and it can be formed by both concave and convex lenses. Now, please make a note that when I published your notes initially, I'm not sure when you printed yours, but I did have a mistake. So this is the correct version. A real image is formed by convex lenses only, and a virtual image can be formed by both types of lenses. So make sure that's correct in your notes. Now for our ray diagrams. You are going to start with your first color, and we are going to draw a ray that is parallel to the axis when it is incident toward the lens. So put your ruler down and draw a line parallel to the axis, and it should stop in the middle of the lens right here. Next, we want it to refract through the focal point on the other side. So I'm going to go from the middle of the lens through this point. So it should look like this. Now we're going to change colors. My second light ray was incident through the focal point first on the same side of the lens as the object. So yours should look like this. And next we're going to have it refract instead of reflect. So it's going to go through to the other side and come out parallel to the axis. So your picture should look like this. Now our third ray is the easy one. It is going to start at the top of the object and just go through the exact center where the lens meets that axis and just keep going. So that third light ray just goes right through the middle. And you should see that all three of our light rays join up together at the same point, and this is where we draw our image. So you'll notice that I started on the axis and I drew the arrow down and it pointed to where all three of those rays cross each other. So this particular example, my object started more than twice the focal length away from the lens. It was a convex lens, so it was a converging one, and my image turned out to be real, inverted, and you should be able to tell from your picture that it is smaller than the actual object that we started with. Now we are going to do some more ray diagrams in class, so the size and position of the image that gets produced is going to change, but for right now we're just practicing seeing what those three light rays do. So this is one of the 6 examples that we're going to do in class. Now let's try a concave lens. So have your ruler and your colors ready. Our first light ray is going to go parallel to the axis. So yours should look like this, and it should stop in the middle of the lens. Now, when it refracts, remember a concave lens is diverging, which means the light's going to diverge away from the principal axis, not towards it. So the angle at which it goes away, you want to line up your ruler with that focal point right there. So you should see that if you were to dot this line back and virtually extend it, that it should meet up with the focal point. Now let's do our second ray. This one, in my case, it's going to be blue. It's going to start at the top of the object and aim through the second focal point, but stop when you get to the lens. So remember, you want to aim it at the focal point here, but stop drawing when you get to the lens. And then from this point, it's going to refract straight outward. And notice, just like when we saw in mirrors, that if we have 2 rays that are never going to cross each other, so our refracted rays in this case, since they're diverging, they're not going to cross, these are the ones that we dot back. So we already did that with our red one. Let's dot this section backwards with our blue. So we had to virtually extend that ray. Now our third one's the easy one. It's going to start at the top of the object and just go straight through the middle of the lens. And it looks like this one. And it looks like this. Now you should be able to see a point where all 3 of those light rays cross each other. So I'm going to draw in my image right here. This time you should be able to tell that the image is still smaller than the object we started with. However, we had to virtually extend some light rays, and then that green one helped us out to see, yes, that is in fact where they all cross. So this makes it a virtual image. Plus you can tell it's a virtual image because it's on this side of the lens. And then a virtual image is always upright. So in this case, you can see that that arrow does point upwards. Now I did put a little asterisk here for you. We are going to do a ray diagram worksheet in class. There will be 6 of them in total. We're actually going to have 4 for the convex lens and 2 for the concave lens. So you're going to get some more practice with these. Good luck, and I'll see you next class.